hello. How are we doing today, Kevin?
Doing good. Got a lot to talk about here at Weber State. I'm going to give a little dissertation in one of my old lectures about the incredible literature and English legacy of this place and the controversy. And I want to talk really, I'm going to devote this show because I'm leading the charge to get a statue of Fawn McKay Brody on our university, the greatest female writer, maybe in American history.
Excellent.
So we'll be talking about that today.
That's great, man.
So I'm going to, first off, I want to show a lot of people, this jacket is real important to Weber State.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about this, first off, and people what I'm up to. So as you know, I have leukemia. I was given 2 months to live in the fall of 2011, and I've learned along the way, you don't just say, hey, I'm cured. I've watched it too many times, including my great friend Tony Gwynn, who I knew personally. He and I were born the exact same day.
Oh, wow.
We knew each other. He got sick the same time I did. He got cancer in his lymph nodes. He went to Scripps. And I'll never forget the day he had the press conference with the doctors, declaring himself better.
Huh.
And so this will tie into the young, incredible swimmer, Iki, in Japan. And the reason is I want to show people this. Jacket is, this is from the USS Reagan. It has, this is high brass female. One of the, not admiral, I'm not even sure about the Navy terminology. What do they call a general in the Navy? Is an admiral. What do they call the second in command on a ship? I don't know the Navy. I know the Army and the Marines, lieutenant, colonels, whatever. But anyway, she has every War Machine legacy sticker there is on here, but she hammers away at the USS Reagan, and Operation Tomoyachi, which meant friendship, was sent into Fukushima. And the denial of the USS Reagan, I work on that case, which was been denied by the courts. They sent that ship in and irradiated those guys. But anyway, to make a long story short, she died of leukemia recently. This is her coat. So I've been doing some videos, don't tread on me, don't tread on me. Well, let me tell you who's treading on you. The nuclear industry, the environmental poisoners, there's the treading on you, and no gun's going to save you. Nothing's going to save you from that. And
no shield is going to save you.
No shield, no armor, no plane droning from outer space. There's nothing that will protect you, not the United States military-industrial beast. It's not going to save you from this one. And so Iki, this is important. She's the most famous athlete in Japanese, maybe, Olympic modern history for sure. She's 18. She was born in Tokyo. She is the poster child for the Fukushima Games 2020, the Leukemia Games as I call them, in Japan. She won 6 gold medals at the Asian Olympics as an 18-year-old last year. Unheard of. The MVP of the entire Asian Games. 2 silvers. Incredible young woman. Amazing. She started not feeling good in February of this year. So she started getting, they ran some blood on her. She has AML leukemia. You think that's a coincidence? So into a bone marrow transplant in Tokyo. She has 585,000 Twitter followers. She tweets every day out of there. This is harder than I thought, 100 times, 1,000 times. You could see the tweets coming. And I was in that exact same position as she's in now. And I was able to, I would use my Facebook page. I didn't have Twitter then. I couldn't upload my videos. I was sick. There's a few. I know where she's at. Then all of a sudden on March 11th, she tweets about Fukushima. Of course, it was the anniversary. March 13th, the last tweet we have from her. So they've circled the wagons on her. I have activists in Japan trying to find out what condition she's in. This is going to be one gigantic story, live or die. And we're all hoping she lives. But so I did a video this morning early about it. 2 hours after I did the video, the Japanese propagandists are out. Oh, Iki's she's enrolled in college, but she joined the swim club, but she couldn't show up because she's fighting, leukemia. She's under treatment. And it wasn't her, it was them. I mean, they're trying to control the narrative, this young 18-year-old, which they've controlled the narrative on Fukushima the whole way. So there's the Fukushima update. But I want to talk about literature in Ogden, Utah, and Weber State University, especially Ogden, Utah, our home, our place, and the Mormon plight that has been the literature of this place in this time. So I'll start off, of course, with the great Fawn McKay Brody. 16-year-old professor in the 1930s at Weber State University. Of course, the campus was downtown Ogden then. The campus has been here since 1950. So she wrote No Man Knows My History about Joseph Smith. She was not an English professor. She ended up being the dean at UCLA, the first female history dean in the United States. I mean, female professor in the 1930s of history. Dr. Burroughs he did his Ph.D. here on Bernard DeVoto, her friend, another Utahn, the great Bernard DeVoto, Ogden. Richard Scowcroft, Ogden.
Also.
How about this one? Wallace Stegner. Now, not born in Ogden, but University of Utah guy, blah, blah. Everybody thinks that Stegner was the laureate at Stanford. No, it was Richard Scowcroft. Ogdenite. Yeah, Brent Scowcroft. That same family. So, but Fawn's Weber State, the greatest counterculturist, she wrote No Man Knows My History, but she also wrote Jefferson's biography. She wrote Nixon's biography. By the way, if you want to read a masterpiece, it's one of my top favorite books of all time. Is Fawn McKay Brodie's biography of Thomas Jefferson, commissioned by the United States government. It's beyond a masterpiece. I mean, so she would go through, and all she said in No Man Knows My History, which got her excommunicated from the Mormon Church, and her mother was a woman named Fawn Brimhall, connected earlier, like my bloodline's connected. I knew her personally. The day she died right after Lennon was killed, January 10th, 1981. She was a hard worker, research historian. She went and researched how many wives. The Mormon narrative was that Joseph Smith had 4 wives. She wanted to expose that he had 47 wives. So she flew back to their homes, to their places, interviewed family members, whatever, and she documented names, addresses, everything. And she never did challenge the Mormon theology. In fact, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the flipping of the Mormon theology. Now, yesterday at conference, this new so-called prophet, Nelson, who's come out and says we don't want to be called Mormons anymore because the whole Mormon thesis was a propaganda. He says we need to be called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter. He's the right one. I actually like he said this. And the Mormons are saying, no, we spent billions on Mormonism. You know, them play, all the BS. Well, let's talk. I mean, so how did this happen? This is important at Weber State University. This is a real important video. So, Mormons, the Hunsaker Mill. My grandfather's Abraham Hunsaker IV, the old town. The foundation of the Mormons, and this is Joseph Smith's words, this is the foundation. This was here till the 1940s. They were utilitarians. They were communists. They were German revivalists. They were Muslims, our brothers, Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith used to quote the Quran over and over, call the the fundamentalist Muslims, the polygamous Muslim, our brothers. Joseph Smith would say, the prophet Abraham, and which they both quoted over and over and over. They were long-haired, didn't cut their beard, fundamental, hardcore Jesus.
Because Abraham is prophet for both religions.
Right? And they're both new religions. And so they were Amish, they were Quakers, they were German, wear dresses to your clothes. I mean, they were socialists. 100, they didn't believe in worshiping the golden calf. 100 anti-capitalist, the opposite. So how did that change? The long-haired, bearded Mormon, the Mormon man with the beard, they wouldn't cut their hair. That's Jesus' teachings, right? And they hammered, I got raised in it. They hammered Jesus. David O. McKay, blah, 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 blah. And Fawn McKay was one of those. She grew up with one of those. DeVoto watched it. So how did they do it? So the Mormon history department got wise. So he was the BYU professor later, but they found this guy. He's a famous writer from Idaho. He's a good writer. I like his work. But so his name was, He's from Twin Falls. So there was two of them worked in symphony. One was named Fisher from Rigby, which was called Annie then, Idaho. Then there was this guy, Leonard Arrington. So he changed the entire narrative. That's the whole cut the hair. So he wrote a book. Now listen, this book is historic. You can look it up and read it. It's called The Great Basin Kingdom. Now I want you to remember, kingdom. The Mormons were the most anti-monarchy people maybe in the history of the world. Not only were they anti-monarchy, they were flag burners. They burned U.S. flags. They burned U.S. curses. It was forbidden. They called the Western United States Deseret. They came out here to get away, which was Mexico. By the way, they had a lot of Mexican belief systems, and they lived very much in harmony with the Mexicans, which the Mexicans, I've got news. I argued with a professor about this the other day. I says, go to Old Town. There's 3 flags that fly there. Oh, no, this was Old Spain. No, they kicked Old Spain out, and it was Mexico. Then they changed the borders.
Since 1821, it became Mexico.
Until 1848.
Exactly.
Which my grandpa, I've stood at the tree in Monterey many times. I've done dissertations there, blah, blah, blah. But so the literature, and so the Mormon Church, I used to speak on their councils. Right here, Weber, I got in a big argument. I says, why do you deny your socialistic roots, your communistic roots? And now Mike Lee's saying, Mike Lee's, this guy, I know him personally, who told me right here, down, it could be the dumbest politician in the history of the state.
I remember that day.
So.
With your face right there.
So my point is, let's talk about our literature, our history, the most famous people here that teach at this university. They're not from here. They don't know shit. And so we want a statue. I want a statue of Fawn, McKay, Brody in front of our library. I want one. And so the Mormon churches already came out and said, we agree with everything Fawn said. What got her excommunicated, she said in one paragraph in the book, it's a fantastic book. There's a first edition up there and special collections up there. It says, my conclusion is Joseph Smith was a high IQ, sociopath, motivated by sex. The Mormon Church agrees with every word that's all she said. She never went after the theology. She never went after, atheists, not atheists, they're not Christians. She never touched it. So why in the God would Weber state the greatest female writer since Harriet Beecher Stowe? There's no doubt. It's unarguable. So again, Devoto and her were friends. But Devoto's not a Weber State guy, but he sure is an Ogden, Utah guy. And that's a public law. Why don't we have a statue of Devoto across the wide Missouri, the great conservationist? So the Mormons, then Hunter came along, and so the Mormons have rewrought their own theology. And they flipped it, just like they have all this. Look, I was raised by Mormons on both sides of the family were, 47, before 47ers. All for it. Ike Potter, Ella Potter. I grew up in it. I was raised in it. My mom and dad weren't good, hard practice. It was pretty loose religion in the 60s. But it was exactly the opposite of what it is now. Completely the opposite. And my thing is that here at Weber State, who do these professors think they are? Who does this Board of Regents think they are? These students are being thieved and robbed. You're really not going to teach us about the true, you're taking a literature class, you're taking a history. The history department is pathetic here. Absolutely. Which you're talking one of the most historic cities in the world, especially modern history. Mozart wrote all roads lead to Vienna. I always go to Vienna. Well, let's say, Ogden. The Brownings. Europeans know about Ogden. Mexicans know about Ogden. Not just the railroad city, the gambler. They know the literature, lineage. Why are we not worshiping it? Think about it. She's a girl. She was, I think, 15 or 16.
Very young.
Professor in the 1930s. Think about that one. First female history dean in the history of the United States. Every award known to man as a writer, as a historian. Yet we blackball her. Yet we're going to worship these BYU propagandists, which that's all the the Great Basin Kingdom. We're going to worship royalty now. And so I want to talk about all these, she's a local. She was born and raised here. She's a local girl. She's a Weber County girl.
She was here from Moncton. From Moncton.
She grew up in Huntsville like the rest of the McKay.
Okay.
And her own family, she has her own relatives teaching here are clueless. It's a disgrace. And so these quintessential so-called Mormons, and I got a great story about Karl Rove here in Weber State debating. This is a great story. So Karl Rove's from Colorado. He's not from here. Mitt Romney's from Boston. He's not from here. How about Glenn Beck? The Mormon missionaries found that whacked out drug addict in the gutter in Las Vegas. He's not from here. The only one that is from here is Roseanne Barr. She's from here.
Is she from here?
Oh, yeah.
From where?
She grew up in Salt Lake, I think out West Valley somewhere.
Okay.
But she's local. And, boy, you ever heard her Mormon rants? Oh.
No, I haven't.
Oh, she'll go. She talks about it. She was sexually molested, blah, blah, blah. And you could see the collateral damage. Whoa.
Ooh, whoa.
Stay back. Not safe. That was like what Hemingway said about Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound is like a untamed house cat, dangerous around children. But that's her. So she's our local girl. She's us. She's our bloodline. I'm telling you, she might be the smartest person I've ever known. And I knew some genius just reading her. So she ends up at the University of Chicago. I don't know how that happened. So did the Mormon historian who took over the Mormon church after he'd been at the University of Chicago, Arrington. Now, Fisher, the great writer and he was always accused, Mormons accused, they were paid propagandists. So you went radically overnight in the 40s and the 50s and 60s. This transformation took 40 years. It didn't happen overnight when they did this. When I was a kid, the fundamentalist Mormons were still here. Now, by the way, the so-called FDS, they were here in Davis County. They got ran out of here in the 50s. It's like the Bundy burgers. Like, they've been right. No. They were here. They're not Mormon lineage. They're welfare mooches. They tried to hijack the whole thing. The Mormons they had their own farms. My grandfather ran the Mormon church farm. They didn't believe in worshiping the golden calf. That's for sure. 100% redistribute. I'm talking 100% redistribute. That's not even socialism. That's the true word of communism, which, by the way, a lot of the early Mormons were the same theology as Einstein and group, came from the same area. You can see the influence of the German revivalist, And so now they're Muslim haters, they're Mexican haters, they're African-American haters, they're racist as hell. And don't let them kid yourself. They're not. Now, this guy who's president now, the Monson was horrid. I kind of like this dude a little bit, because he says, no. And you can see he's praying and he's really,
Concerned.
He is.
He is concerned.
Now, we had a great president of the Mormon Church from Ogden for a while, Hinckley.
Right.
He's from Ogden.
He was anti-nuclear.
He was, and he switched teams along the way, but he's the one that brought all the different faiths together. When the Cathedral of the Magdalene got redone, he's the one that had the Mormon put up the dime, and so he tried to unify. Now I don't agree with Mormon theology. Don't get me wrong, and I'm still a Mormon boy. I rejected it when I was a young kid, but as far as the history goes, nobody knows the Mormon history like me, and so this trying to rewrite it and rebrand it, and what they have rewrote it and rebranded it, and what they've done to Idaho, what they've done to Wyoming, they've turned this into this military-industrialized beast. These people were anti-war. They were flag burners, by the way. I got news for you. The Mormons, when I was a kid, they would literally burn U.S. flags. When I was a kid, in Mormon teachings and in my school, T.L. Smith's mom was my second-grade teacher. When the whole Pledge of Allegiance thing started, they told you, don't you dare stand up. And then we weren't taught that LBJ or, Nixon or Kennedy or Eisenhower was president. We weren't taught that. We were taught David O. McKay was president. But anyway, we were taught not to pledge to any flag, to any nation, and then they would quote scriptures of why not to.
Like if Utah was an independent country.
It was called Deseret. And it was the whole western United States, and they fought. Ike Potter is my great-great-grandpa. He's the Mormon outlaw who fought Johnson's army. You go down to the Beehive House. Brigham Young had cannons pointed up to Fort Williams, and vice versa. The United States Army military was actually afraid of them. They had their own currency. They had their own welfare farms. They had their own stores, ZCMI Co-op. That was still that way when I was a boy, and I ain't that old. And it was very well taught here at this university. Fawn McKay was a legend when I was a kid here. You know, and the controversy started. So, you know, just because they hijacked it for 30, 40 years, Jesus, I mean, they required you to be clean shaven. I mean, they're the opposite. What's the opposite of Jesus if you're a Christian? That would be Satan. So we were taught when we were kids in Mormon theology, there'd come a time in the Mormon church that they would completely hijack in hairspray the whole church, and it would be Satan tricking you to think they're the Mormons. We were taught that. It's written in that's written into Mormon theology. Hello. So, but the literature on this town, Richard Scowcroft, Bernard DeVoto, Fawn McKay, Brody, I mean, Edward Abbey. He wasn't from here, but he sure spent a lot of time. And if it wasn't for Wallace Stegner, Utah, there would be no Edward Abbey. He's the one that took the chance on him. So my point is, if you're going to school here, these professors are pathetic here. You know, I taught here when we were the #1 school business in the country, and we don't write for it. They're a pathetic joke. They're corporatized just like the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church now is, I say the U on the mountain is usury. So why don't we take this back, just for the fact that she is the literature historian genius? Why are we not worshiping her lineage? I want a statue here, and I'm going to push it hard.
Out of the library?
Right in front of the library, right there.
Right there.
That incredible historic library.
Here in Ogden campus, Weber State University.
Yeah, the historic Stewart Library. I mean, I can go on. I could write a whole book.
That's your headquarters, man.
Yeah, and which was Edward Abbey's headquarters, which was, I mean, how about when Mark Hoffman was forging all the freaking stuff? You know, the Salamander letter and all those forgeries, and then he committed those atrocity murders down there, blah, blah, blah. He's still in prison. He did that at the Weber State. Melvin Dumar forged the Howard Hughes will in there. D.B. Cooper did his gig in there, Weber State professor. I mean, that's just the crazy ones. I'm not talking about all the... There's no research PhDs on this campus. You got me. And I've had to turn to private funding, you know, as the... I mean, that's basically what I am, is a research PhD. And I've watched this go at this university and this campus, including this radio station. Look, I mean, you could have testified to that. You know, I mean, tell the people what happened to this and what it was when you got here.
That was terrible.
There was nothing here. They were trying to close it down, put a restaurant in it. Sold off our signal. When it used to be called 88 The Beat when I was a kid here.
Right, 81 The Beat.
Yeah. 80. Oh, and I'll tell you what, this place was a powerhouse. It was like the #2 FM radio station in the whole Rocky Mountain region. And they were controversial. The students were fantastic. We're bringing it back, right?
That's what I heard. Yeah, that's what I heard. That it was only the #2 radio station only after NPR, National Public Radio.
Yeah, and then here came 103.5, The Arrow, which was a derivative from here. Some kids from here who got that. They're still going. KSL,
yeah. I love The Arrow.
Me too. They do great work.
Favorite,
but KSL have share them, but they're locals from around Weber. They're Weber State guys who got that signal originally.
KSL?
No. KSL bought them recently. The Arrow, you know, and so so that's what they do. So I want a statue of Fawn on this campus, and I've pushed it hard. And these English professors, they're a joke. I forgot more than they'll know, you know. And same with the history professor, you know, Dr. Sessions, the penny painter, you know, which I call him. So you know, that's what I call all these guys. Not only did they cover up the truth, like. You know, I use the term penny painter because of, that's Michelangelo. You know, Michelangelo's paintings are all painted over by his own friends, which they used to be called the time. Me and another guy in New York come up with the term penny painter. By the way, the guy who rewrote the history and Fisher, he was the professor at Washington Square in New York. There was a university there called Washington Square, which NYU is today. You know, so he taught there. These guys have a lot of lineage. And, of course, the Mormon Church has a lot of hooks, but this whole rewriting history, I don't think it's, and I'll say this to the Mormon Church, which I say, you want to be controversial with me about your lies. It has not worked for you. You're bleeding members so hard in money, so it has not worked. Why don't you go back to when you were growing membership before you 86'd Fawn? You had growing memberships, not declining. Now, you know, it's turned into a pyramid scheme, just like the evangelicals. So, you know, that's it's important for people in this town and this university to realize that academia has been hijacked. Not just, the University of Utah. Well, BYU's BYU, it's the Mormon Church.
Right.
But this is a state-funded university. State-funded.
Yes.
We're supposed to be teaching the truth here.
Weber State, yes.
This is a university. This is not a junior high or a high school or an elementary. We're supposed to talk about the controversial, hard subject and get down and dirty to the truth. These are grown men and women that go to this school. Oh, by the way, I can't tell you, did you go to the Bill Nye gig?
I didn't.
Well, I did.
How was it?
Oh, well, Weber State was a clown circus putting it together. The microphones didn't work, and they had this physics professor. Oh, Bill, she's talking to him like this. Could you tell us where babies go? She was pathetic, a joke. You could see Bill getting pissed and pissed and pissed.
Oh, wow.
Then he broke out, and then he just went on his own, and he went after the nuclear industry. I jumped up and screamed. I loved him. I wanted to kiss him on the mouth. He called the nuclear industry corrupt, crooks.
Wow.
He said no answer for the. He went off. He was fantastic. The Weber State microphones.
Wow.
You should have heard. He was. I went in with very low expectations. The place was packed. You couldn't hear because Weber State's microphones didn't work. It was a joke.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, really unbelievable.
They didn't test before, or what happened?
Good question.
Yeah.
And they had to switch microphones.
An event of this size of event, you have to test everything. Be sure that everything's